Chavirot. I'm Rolene Marks, the World Wizo Executive Member in charge of Public Diplomacy and Hasbara, and welcome to another edition of Talking Tachlis. And I'm delighted today to be speaking to Arsen Ostrovsky. He is the Executive Director of the Israeli Jewish Congress. Arsen, welcome to Talking Tachlis.
It's great to be here, thank you.
First of all, a huge mazal tov on your promotion to Executive Director.
Thank you. It might sound cliche, but it really is a team effort. And we have a wonderful team that's just really committed and dedicated to what we're trying to do, what we're trying to achieve with Israel and the Jewish people, which I can talk about.
Tell us a little bit about the Israeli Jewish Congress. What are your main aims? What kind of work you do?
Sure. We're fairly new in terms of the pro-Israel community. We started 4 years ago in 2012 by a number of prominent Israeli individuals, headed by Mr. Vladimir Slutsky, amongst others. Look, in essence, we're an independent Israeli-based organization, and our primary vision is to promote the principle of Israel as a Jewish state and to reinforce the special bond between the Jewish state and the Jewish people in the diaspora. But our focus is predominantly within the Jewish communities of Europe. Within that, we do many things. We actively work on combating BDS and anti-Semitism, which are, of course, major issues in Europe at the moment. We work with Holocaust survivors here in Israel. We try and empower the next generation of young leaders, both in Israel and Jewish leaders in Europe as well, where we really need to sort of focus on that, as we do all over the world with young leaders. We do also a lot on promoting the Israel-EU diplomatic relationship, which is, as we know, not without its challenges, but there's a lot of positives, a lot of opportunities, but also a lot of challenges we need to overcome. So it's never dull. There's always a lot of work. We work closely with many of the Jewish umbrella organizations and Zionist groups within Europe, but we also work here with various members of Knesset, with the Foreign Ministry, the Diaspora Ministry, other government bodies, with European parliamentarians. So there's a lot of work to be done, and we're step by step we're getting there.
Well, it's quite incredible. I mean, here we sit, an Aussie and a South African, talking about living in Israel and working with diaspora communities in Europe. And now you've touched on something very, very important, and it affects a lot of our chaverot, especially those in our federations in Europe, and that is, first of all, dealing with issues like BDS, like delegitimization. And I know that you have lobbied quite strongly at various world bodies like the European Parliament against the growing anti-Israel sentiment and resolutions or sentiment that has been passed against the state of Israel. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences and the importance of getting young people involved in the lobbying efforts to ensure better relations between the communities or their countries and Israel?
Sure, gladly. If I might just touch on the first thing you said, it is quite special. There's a South African and Australian sitting here in Israel as Zionists, as Jews, as Israelis, and we, certainly I do, and we as IJC, we really do take the view that on a macro level, whether we're Jews in Israel, in Europe, North America, Australia, wherever it may be, ultimately we are part of one family. We're united by one faith, tradition, history, and ultimately the state of Israel is the point of centrality of our identity. So I think that really is something quite special, and something we take as a broad view in terms of all our activities, and when we work not just with Jewish communities of Europe but also with North America, we work closely with them, trying to sort of connect these communities. So it's something very important and very special. In terms of what you touched about lobbying, it really is something quite critical. At the end of the day, in a Western environment, in Europe, America, Canada, we work in a democratic system where decisions are made by Parliament. And elected lawmakers, they make decisions based on the will of their constituency. As citizens, as constituents, you have the right, indeed you even have the duty and obligation to speak to your lawmakers, to your representatives, and put forward your views and your positions So things that are affecting, say, the Jewish community of Europe. It's important for those communities to approach their leaders and to discuss with them, quite frankly, this is the situation, this is what we are facing, this is what we believe ought to happen. And for us as IJC, we're an Israeli-based organisation, so that's really something quite critical here. So what we do is, we believe that the people on the ground, the Jewish communities on the ground, they know what the situation is best, how to approach it, how to deal with it. They're on the ground, so they know what is happening. All we want to do is to find a way to empower them and help them and work with them to amplify their voice, not just in Europe, but importantly also here, sort of to be their voice or a bridge for them with the Jewish state, with the Israeli lawmakers as well, not just within Europe, but here. And in terms of lobbying, that's something that can really be done on any level, both with established Jewish community leaders, but also young leaders, next generation, because they're part of the society, they're part of this community. So I think it really is a critical aspect in terms of getting Israel's position out, getting the position of the Jewish community, the daily threats, challenges, concerns they face, so that action can be taken to alleviate that.
Well, can I make a shidduch here? Because
Please.
World Wizo are in a very unique position in that we have consultative status on world bodies like the United Nations, which, as we know, often passes very, very loaded resolutions against the state of Israel. But we have consultative status on bodies such as ECOSOC, where we lobby very, very hard to improve the status of women. And maybe we can look at ways that we can work with the RJC so that we can improve that those relationships, and also getting Israel's message out to the general public, which is and bringing the face of Israel that's not just about the conflict, but actually the Tachlis work on the ground that we're doing in the country to improve the status of minorities, the status of women, to improve educational systems around the country, and how that influences the region, because this is such a multifaceted dialogue that we are having, and from sitting in these bodies, it's often quite challenging.
It is. You don't have to sell me, first of all, because I really do believe the work that you guys are doing is truly quite remarkable and very special and very important. So with absolute pleasure, we would love to work with you. And I can tell you, we do take the view here that we will work and would like to work with any organisation, Jewish, non-Jewish, that shares our vision, shares our beliefs, our principles, primarily also to support the state of Israel and the Jewish communities. So we would much rather work with others to lift each other up, and by doing so, lift up our community and our people and amplify our voices and make sure our messages are being heard. So whatever we can do to collaborate, with absolute pleasure.
Arsen, let's talk about the BDS movement, boycott, divestment and sanctions, and the impact that it's having on young Jews across Europe. Many feel very, very intimidated by the tactics employed by BDS and their supporters, and a lot feel that it's not just enough they have to deal with growing anti-Semitism, they have to deal with this vitriolic campaign against the state of Israel by BDS, and they feel very, very disempowered. How can we help them?
It's not easy, and you're right when you said it can be very vitriolic. We saw that, I think, particularly after the Matisyahu example last year, where, he was an American Jewish musician. He wasn't Israeli. He hadn't said anything about the conflict, and what he did was very peaceful nature. But here he was, and so we are seeing on a much more, like you said, vitriolic level of BDS hatred against Jewish communities across Europe. I think that's really sort of the main target or victims, so to call. It's not the state of Israel primarily. It's, I think, who's much more impacted are Jewish communities in the diaspora, particularly Europe, where it can be a challenge. But there are many things that can be done, and I see on a daily basis some amazing groups and individuals and grassroots efforts that are being employed throughout Europe to fight back, and we are seeing a lot of results. We've seen, for example, in Germany and Austria, a number of BDS accounts which have been closed or shut down by banks. We've seen a number of important legal decisions by courts which have ruled certain BDS movements illegal. France, for example, has a law against BDS altogether. The only country in Europe that has such an extensive law, which is something quite remarkable. But I think in order to get to that level, I think especially the young generation first needs to be equipped with the facts. They need to understand also what is the BDS, who is behind it, what are the goals, and how it affects them. So once I think you fully sort of understand sort of the nature and the primary purpose of the BDS, which is not just an anti-peace movement, but a very anti-Semitic movement as well, you can sort of be better equipped with various tools how to deal with it. We've talked about lobbying, for example, for one. There's a lot of things you can do in terms of legal avenues. Really important in this day, especially, is to form multi-faith collaborations with other groups and organizations in civil society, because we alone, or we as Jews alone, although we're the target, we alone cannot fight this successively. So we need others on board to work with us from other faiths, civil societies. There's a lot that can be done in terms of to positively promote Israel, because BDS thrives on this negative narrative of Israel. So what can we do to push back? Not just push back, but go on the fence, go on the front foot and promote a positive side of Israel, a positive narrative of Israel. So I think there's a lot of things that can be done. There's a lot of really fantastic grassroots organizations, Jewish and non-Jewish, that are working on campus, a lot of student societies. So there's a lot of things that can be done.
Well, as you know, we have a wonderful empire or network of Chaverot all around the world who want to be better pro-activists for Israel, which is why we have started Talking Tachlis. And anyone who follows you on social media knows that you are the consummate digital diplomat. And what you do is you present the very, very serious and factual side of Israel. But you also show such a love and such a positive side of the country. I mean, anyone who follows you not only knows that you have the cutest dog in the country,
True.
but also you show the world the other face of Israel. I don't think Tel Aviv has ever looked more enticing than the way that you promote the city every single weekend. How do we get our Chaverot around the world? Because I truly believe that this is a very, very positive avenue for building those bridges with other communities and with other organizations, many of which have never been to Israel and have this concept of the country as very grey and very military and very conflict-ridden. How do we get our Chaverot of all ages, of all languages around the world being absolute digital diplomatic rock stars?
I think for far too long we, and by we I mean in the pro-Israel community, have looked at Israel primarily through this prism of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And that in so many ways has defined Israel. And we haven't had the chance to tell people what it is that Israel really means to us. What does it mean to me? And what it means to me and to you may be different. But to me, Israel is not defined by the conflict. And too often when we speak about this land, the first words that come up to mind is terror, violence, settlements, rockets, negative aspects. But there's so much more to Israel. And if you look at, for example, my social media feed, you will see posts about maybe what the Palestinian Authority and Hamas is saying, dispersed with beautiful pictures of sunset and the latest hummus or what I saw at the beach. Because to me, Israel is so much more than the conflict. To me, Israel is this amazing land of innovation and culture and beautiful scenery and people and faces from all walks of life. So I think it's important that we show people the true side of Israel, one that's multifaceted and nuanced and complex and beautiful in so many ways. And I think social media is a really important tool for that. It's we're sort of fighting, advocating for Israel in multiple battlefronts. We have our soldiers on the ground. We have our diplomats at international arenas. We have lawyers. But we also have social media. And I know anyone sitting at home in front of a computer can be a warrior for Israel, can fight for Israel, can show people Israel they love. And you have this amazing sort of ocean of supporters and audience that, it's in the millions and billions. If you look at Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat and YouTube and Instagram, and I lose track of all the all the different platforms, but it really is a wonderful opportunity for us to get on the front foot, to give people the narrative of Israel that we know, that's much broader than just the conflict. It is also an important medium by which we have to do the ugly stuff, in terms of we need to use it also to expose the lies and the hatred, of which, believe me, there is a lot of them. But it is also wonderful.
For our Chaverot who want to get tweeting, how do we follow you on Twitter?
Very easy. You can just follow me at Ostrov_A.
One last bit of advice to our Chaverot who are engaging others on social media. One of the statements I'm seeing more and more is that many feel intimidated to voice their opinions on social media because they are very, very fearful of the backlash that happens when they do that. Any tips and tools for dealing with negative Nancy's out there?
When you're talking about Israel, there will always be these negative Nancy's. I can post something about Jerusalem, or as happened recently, I posted something quite mundane when I was at the Shuk, and I got a backlash of hate. But that will happen always when you're dealing with such a hot topic, controversial issue as Israel, as the Middle East. Sometimes it's important to just ignore it. Sometimes, depending on the veracity of it, you can always block or report someone, depending on if they breach certain guidelines. That always is an option. Sometimes it's also best to expose them, to expose this vitriol and this hatred. But I think we need to be tough. It will happen, but we need to persist, and we need to expose this hatred, and also at the same time show people again, the Israel that we love.
Arsen Ostrovsky, Executive Director of the Israeli Jewish Congress, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to World Wizo's Talking Tachlis. We are absolutely delighted that you could join us today, and we say Toda Rabba, and we'll be following you on Twitter.
My pleasure. It was great to be here.